Okay. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Jana Selvage. I am the founder and program manager lead for the River Mile Network. I'm glad to see everybody here with us and the excitement we've seen in registrations for this program. We're all looking forward to it. I know that. Just kind of a little background. Let's see if I can make this work. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't.
It's sharing.
It's sharing, so I think I'm gonna, does that look okay to everybody? Can you see it?
Yes.
So I think I'm gonna not mess with the putting it into the slideshow. That often doesn't work all that well. But
Looks
yeah,
good.
the River Mile Network is about connecting people within our watershed. Now, recently, like just in the matter of a couple of weeks, we have decided that we are about connecting people to people within their watershed, much more. So much of what we do is not only about the Columbia River watershed, it is about watersheds. And what we have applies to anywhere. And so it is connecting people within their watershed, within their local area and beyond, for resources and opportunities. All right, now will it play with me? There we go. Oh, yeah, but it won't do the.
It looks good.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to do
There
that.
you go.
Can't you see it?
Looks good.
Okay. Only problem with that is that I can't see any of my notes behind it. But the River Mile Network is all about opportunities for students, teachers, educators, scientists, and resource managers to connect with each other and to get out and explore their watershed. Our main project is a crayfish study. It was not what we set out to do because really initially our goal was to explore an essential question in whatever way works for each individual group. How do relationships among components of an ecosystem affect watershed health? And it's so much more than water quality or a single animal. It's about the connections within. Just like the River Mile Network is about connecting everybody together, it's looking at that same feature, shall we say, within the watershed that we all live in. The program's been going actually since about 2007, 2008. Is Deb on our call?
Yes.
Rick? Yep. So it really
yes,
began.
I am.
Hi, Deb. Deb Berg
Hello.
was one of the first teachers that I worked with as the education specialist at Lake Roosevelt National Recreation Area. I am retired now. And we began this program as a park program. And we did all kinds of stuff going on and bringing things to Eastern Washington. That was kind of a big part of what I did with the River Mile, not just for the River Mile, but with them, was bringing the opportunities to areas in Eastern Washington that didn't have a lot of opportunities. Most of them at that time were happening over on the west side of the state. And so we were trying to bring more to them over here. Everything that we have done is based on science, the most current standards. Every state's a little bit different, but we base off of the next generation science standards, NGSS, but we also use Common Core and several others. We've dabbled also in some of the social science stuff with fur trade and ice age floods even, with the work that we've been done. And it is just done by large number of partnerships. We really want to see students going outdoors through student field investigations. Get out there, get to know what you're doing, look at the system, and work with the scientists, professionals, researchers in local areas. We do a lot of teacher training. This is our real big focus. The program at Lake Roosevelt initially started out as a program just like any other student program. And I soon changed that because we realized that one person couldn't serve. There were 29 32 school districts around Lake Roosevelt, and I couldn't serve all of those. And so we looked at providing opportunities for teachers. If we can reach Rick, Jim Eakins, myself, Deb, Pauline, and some of our sub-awardees from our EPA grant, if each of us can reach out to 30 or 40 teachers, those teachers can also reach out to 30 or 40 students each year. And so we're looking at a much better way of spreading the word, and do that through our network projects, Crayfish Study, looking at, what's going on. Here's our management team. I'm sorry, Pauline, I don't have a photo of you on this one. I know we have one somewhere, but these folks are incredible. They spend much time on the River Mile and helping me. Actually, I think more than anything else, I'm helping them at this point. The network happens because people want it to happen. And so I'm very grateful to these folks and to people like our speaker today who are willing to share with everyone. Rick, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Janice. And it's great to see folks adding their information in chat. We have quite a few new folks today who I don't think have participated in a River Mile event before. So that's really exciting. And it also speaks to our wonderful speaker, Ralph Lampman, who, as I said before, is with the Yakama Nation, a biologist. He did do training at Oregon State University and has some folks who love him well here in Oregon, but now he's based out in Washington. If you're not familiar with the state as much, the Yakama area is beautiful, and it's out kind of more in the drier, quieter part of the state. And I drive that way quite a bit, and I just marvel at the beauty of those lands out there. So we're thrilled to have Ralph, and I'm gonna, without further ado, turn it over to you, Ralph. And you can feel free to share your screen.
Yep, sorry, I had it myself on mute. Thank you, Rick, for the intro, and thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Ralph Lampman, and I like to say I really like salmon, but I love lamprey. You can find me looking for them in any given day, stream, river, lake, or an ocean bay. Some people eat them raw, but I cook them on my spit. I love them so much that I go into a fit. Even though some biologists don't like to admit, when it comes to anatomy, this fish is legit. That's my introduction that I wanted to start with. And here's my presentation. So as you know, I'll be talking about Pacific Lamprey. There's many different tribal names. Assume is what they're commonly called in the Sahaptin language. So I'll be, it's another underdog species similar to crayfish. So I think we share a lot in common. My last name sounds kind of like a lamprey. I thought about changing my name to Lamprey-man, but there's one thing that's in the way. My wife said we're having a divorce if we change our last name, so not going to be able to do that. We have a lot of wonderful partners that work on lamprey projects. Mainly, this is the CRITFIC, Columbia Intertribal Fish Commission member tribes. These are some of the people that I work with on lamprey, and we have a wonderful team here. For those that have seen lamprey, I think you might recognize this really startled look that they have with the big eyes, and it kind of reminds me of my 7-year-old son when I catch him red-handed when he's doing bad things. But I think a lot of people are have a bad image from lamprey, that they feel they're scary, appalling, fearsome, gnarly, but I'm going to show through the presentation that they're actually pretty timid, quiet, peaceful, and fascinating. So that hopefully you'll get that through the presentation. I do want to share one story with regarding my older son, Micah. His middle name is Pacific. Probably know why. Um, I had him. He was an unexpected child when I was in grad school. I started taking these lamprey pills. I don't know if you could see, these are some of the pills you can get from Japan, and they're made out of lamprey. And I was just needing an energy boost for my graduate study, but there was a side effect, and I had a baby instead. Um, but as I experienced having Micah, I learned there's a lot of similarities with lamprey and babies. You know, when they're both nocturnal, um, they're also great at sucking, and they're parasitic to their host, and almost impossible to read their mind. So I gained a in appreciation for both of them.
Ralph, you're
They're
hilarious. I just want to make sure you know that we're not seeing slides. It's fine if you didn't share
oh
them yet, but
sorry
if
sorry sorry.
you want us to see something, go
Yep,
ahead and share.
sorry about that. Let me go here. Yeah, and here. Sorry. So let me just start.
Quick recap. There we
Yep,
go.
my title slide and my wife and the collaborators and the lamprey startled look and maybe Michael Lampman.
A second chance at the laugh lines.
Yep, so nocturnal, great at sucking, and parasitic, and impossible to read their mind. So this is the lamprey close up, the adult life stage. They're quite different from other fish species. They don't have any bones. They have cartilage similar to shark. They don't have any paired fins like most other fish. They just have a couple dorsal fins and a caudal fin. Um, and they have a suction mouth, so no, they're jawless. And they're all really ancient fish. So, um, you know, salmon is, about 6 to 20 million years old. Sturgeon is as old as the dinosaurs, but lamprey, they go much, much further back. And, I think another analogy I could provide is that if lampreys are your 100-year-old grandpa and grandma, basically humans are a 2-week-old baby, so we're still in our diapers and crying for help. So the lamprey have seen a lot of things that we as humans have not witnessed. Um, so as there has been a lot of mass extinction events that have occurred in those times. So there's been ice ages, meteorites, volcanic eruptions, climate change, maybe even alien invasions. We're not sure. Nobody knows the truth, but we do know that lamprey in the last 150 years, all these things haven't really affected lamprey um, negatively. Eh, but these, more recent changes that humans have made have certainly have a big impact on the lamprey. And lamprey are, pretty unique species. They're one of the oldest vertebrate species. When they're at the larval stage, they look really similar to lancelet that are in the ocean. They don't really look like a vertebrate species at this stage, just burrowing in the fine sediment without any eyes and just filter feeding. But then they transform and then, get their eyes and teeth and start to look more like a vertebrate species. So they made this giant leap, from these invertebrate to vertebrate um, species. Within their lifetime, they go through that change. And, really, if we didn't have lamprey, that really started, this evolution of vertebrate species, we may not even be here. What one kind of example of the evolution you can see in lamprey is that lamprey have these 7 gill holes, and sharks typically have 5. And the reason that sharks and many of the other fish species have 5 is because the front 2 gill slots turn into, over time slowly evolve into a jaw structure. So that's why the sharks have 5. Most of them have 5, and lamprey still have 7. And there are many, many medical advances that have been made over time. Lamprey are, they suck blood from their host fish, and so they use anticoagulants to ensure the blood doesn't clot, and that has help in the medical field. And they're one of the few species that can heal from a spinal cord injury. So we're learning how that could be applied for human and many other things that are listed here. And lots of the interest in lamprey has really skyrocketed in terms of science and learning about conservation and also eradication in the Great Lakes. There's been a lot of new development. This is showing the ceded lands of the Yakama Nation and also the 4 Pacific member tribes. So we occupy about 1/3 of the Washington state. So we're working in all the subbasins that are part of this. So we travel widely to monitor these species, the lamprey species. So typically when we talk about the reasons that we need to protect lamprey, besides the medical and evolutionary reasons, one is that they're an important food source for the tribes. They're considered a medicine, and but not just for the tribes. The many other species rely on lamprey, and they feed on lamprey at various life stages. There's also, it has been said that lamprey could serve as a buffer for salmon. They both travel around similar times as juveniles, heading out to the ocean, and then as adults coming back. And they're really popular prey for many of the salmon predators. So the more lamprey we have, we can help protect salmon. And then larvae, they live several years under the fine sediment, and they do a lot of work underneath that we don't typically see, but they're considered the farmer of the underwater world. They serve a similar role that worms do in the forest, where they till the fine sediment, aerate it, and also recycle nutrients within to make it habitable for other insects and other species and crayfish. And just to show kind of why lamprey are so popular, just wanted to show this kind of a picture series showing the bald eagle snatching the lamprey from a sea lion. So if they're doing that, you know that it's quite tasty. And so historically, there was a lot more lamprey that were available in the Columbia River Basin. This is from Willamette Falls, and you can see just the massive quantity of lamprey that were there. Even in other photos, this was taken near the Dalles at one of the scaffold where the tribal members are fishing, but down below you can see all the lamprey just climbing up those rocks and trying to pass through. move upstream. This is from upper Snake River, where there's no, above Hell's Canyon and above Anadromous Passage now, but lamprey, where you can see when they dewatered a dam, there were just hundreds and thousands of lamprey that just surfaced there, and the lady and the gentleman holding them, posing with the lamprey. And so a lot of this info, there is not a lot of data, hard data for, quantity wise, and there's a lot of missing links and history about, where they were and how abundant they were. So one of the things that we have been doing is to interview a lot of the tribal elders so we can learn more about where they were finding them and harvesting them and how they used them. So that's, connection that is getting lost more and more as the opportunity to harvest them is scarce, and the knowledge and the the cultural ties that they have has slowly dissipated, and certainly the Yakama Nation and other tribes are trying to preserve them and um, pass on those knowledge, but it's also not just the ties with the human, but all the species that depend on lamprey, salmon included, are losing those ties. So that's something that the Yakama Nation and others are really trying to bring back. But it's not just the tribal members that love lamprey. Lamprey is cherished in all over the world. These are just some examples of the dishes that are served in Europe and Japan. And so, like, yeah, in Japan, you can eat them raw, sashimi style. That's my favorite. It tastes just like salmon when they're raw, pink meat, and or you could grill them or deep fry them many different ways. And as you know, the royal family from England loved lamprey as well, and they still eat them to this day. But supposedly King Henry I died from eating too many lamprey. That's what they say. And in Japan, where I'm from, the history is pretty long, and so there's some documents dating back, 300 years ago, talking about the medicinal properties of lamprey and how they're served and harvested. I find it really interesting that the traps that they use in Japan and some of the tribes use are really, really similar. They have a similar shape and structure, and I think they evolved, likely evolved separately, but came to the same similar design. So lamprey are really nutritional. You could say they're probably one of the healthiest seafood in the world that's out there. The left graph is showing, from eating one lamprey, about 400 grams, the nutritional uh, nutritional elements you can absorb, and most of the vitamins, minerals, fatty acids. The blue line shows 100% recommended daily intake. You meet pretty much everything by just eating one lamprey, so no need to work on your vegetables or any of those other food. And then some of the things like vitamin A and omega-3 and B12 are really, really, really high. So vitamin A is really important for like your eye, your vision, and so like if you have a really dry eye in Japan, they take the pills to help cure the dry eye symptoms. So yeah, instead of an apple a day, we could do one lamprey a day. And But unfortunately, last year, for the first time, there has been a lamprey consumption advisory that Oregon State issued, and they looked at, it was mainly through related to the mercury um, and um, and some other contaminants that was high when they were looked at together. And so unfortunately, yeah, they're recommending that you don't, we shouldn't be eating too many lamprey, but hopefully that will change in the near future. They're Pacific lamprey are one of the many species that are in the basin. So there's also resident lamprey called Western Brook lamprey. There's a Pacific Brook lamprey that's closely related, and then there's a Western River lamprey that are that go to the ocean and come back similar to Pacific lamprey. They're not as big as Pacific lamprey, but kind of intermediate size. And then, so these are kind of the size range of those three species. And then the Western River lamprey and Western Brook lamprey, even though they're considered a separate species, they're actually related. And you know, genetically, they're almost indistinguishable. So it's sort of like your steelhead and rainbow trout. So they can interbreed um, and spawn together. If you go outside of the Columbia River Basin, and if you look at like Oregon State, then there's a lot more other species that are listed on the right here. And yeah, it gets pretty complicated. I don't even know how to ID some of these species, and now just kind of looking at the life history of Pacific lamprey, there's mainly three life stages that we observe. The first stage is called amosete, and then macrothalmia, and then adult. Um, those are just kind of big words that lamprey biologists sometimes use, but basically they're larva and juvenile, and then adult. So they're all, you know, you can see the changes in their mouth as they transform from larvae to juvenile. It's sort of like a tadpole going into a frog. It's considered a complete metamorphosis. They really change their physiology and structure quite a bit. And then with adults, they spend almost a year in the freshwater before they spawn. So they change quite a bit during that time. So many of the tribes call them night eel versus day eel, and they do actually lose their eyesight as they get mature, sexually mature, and they start to come out during the daytime as well. They live a very long time, you know, compared to some of the salmonids like coho generally have a 3-year life cycle. In lamprey, and so some of this were recently updated, but we're learning that they spend a long time as a larvae, and then they also spend a long time in the ocean, um, and then come back. So generally about 14, 15 years, but it can really range from like 10 to 20 years. They're really plastic and flexible. The distribution of Pacific lamprey within the Columbia Basin has really shrunk over time. So the red arrow shows where they historically were found or documented in the upper Columbia and upper Snake River. But you know, the anonymous passage ends at those yellow arrows there. So they just about lost half of their distribution over time. And you know, at these uppermost dams, there's only about 100 adults or so that are passing each year. So they're functionally extinct in those areas. And numbers have also declined considerably. Now I want to just shift gear to show kind of the different life stages of lamprey. So this is adult life stage. This is Arctic lamprey, but the spawning is really similar between species. So here we go. Video might have been a little choppy, but you can see the male and female, they do a little dance, male sucking onto the female head, and so it's a lot more exciting than salmon spawning, I think. And then when they turn into larvae, they're mostly in the fine sediment, and so they like these type of habitat that are slow water and has a lot of fine sediment, and even better if you have a lot of detritus like leaves and twigs. That's kind of their food source. So that's where you would find larvae, but typically when you find larvae, there's usually other species that you can find those kind of habitat, including juvenile crayfish. In Japan, they consider lamprey, or sorry, this is a cartoon that kind of shows what lamprey does in the stream, and essentially it's showing that if you don't have lamprey, then you don't have the organisms that digest food source in the river, and so basically you would have a more of a diarrhea if you don't have the right bacteria in your gut. So that's kind of the role that lamprey may be serving by helping digest the food source. So they're considered an ecological engineer, and they're also considered indicator species because they know that where lamprey are abundant in Japan, the stream habitat is relatively healthy. It has all the diverse habitat that lamprey need. Lamprey really need slow water habitat and fast water habitat, and not just that, but diverse array of substrate. They really have to have all those different things. So um, yeah, it's an indicator that the stream is functioning pretty well. And there are many predators that love lamprey. These are just some examples of species that are up there. I have some actions. So they're considered keystone species because of that, similar to salmon. These are some of the action shots of lamprey being eaten at different life stages. So they serve many roles, similar to salmon and beaver, just as one species. There are many threats that lamprey face. A lot of these are similar to salmon, but perhaps double or triple the impact. And so all these things combined really has an impact on lamprey. In the ocean, lamprey do feed on blood and body fluids of other fish. They're not necessarily you know uh, they're more of a generalist, so they feed on whatever is most abundant at the time. So and they're mostly on the bottom of our kind of lower portion of the water column. So these are some of the species that they feed during that time, but they're mainly feeding on the blood, so they don't necessarily kill the fish. The host fish may get a little weakened, but they don't necessarily die. And once they come back to the freshwater, they face many of these dams on the main stem and tributary environment, and these are typically fast water, and they have 90-degree corners that make it really hard for lamprey to pass. This is a video kind of showing how they struggle through these dams. This is a Winchester Dam in Oregon, where I studied the lamprey, and I just happened to kind of come across this one of the mornings when I was scanning for lamprey that I tagged. And so you could see that one almost made it through, but then there's these slots that are sometimes in there that break up the surface, and they struggle to pass. But they do have a unique ability to climb up, like waterfalls. This is Willamette Falls. There's a couple lamprey here that are leapfrogging each other, but you can see how they coil their body, detach, and then reattach, and that's how they just keep climbing. I think the video is a little choppy, sorry about that. So using that, we are able to take advantage of that ability to pass some of the lamprey. At Prosser Dam, we have a wetted wall structure that helps some of the lamprey pass. And there's also some folks from California started using these 4-inch tubes, and lamprey are able to really just keep going through those 4-inch tubes and pass some of these structures as well. So lots of unique ways that we can pass lamprey without demolishing the dams, which is expensive. And there's other things that we could use to help provide a saltwater refuge for lamprey so they can pass. Juveniles are also vulnerable to these type of like screens that are at hydro dams, and they can, because of their size, they can get into places that salmon can't. Just recently, last year, we were able to have the first acoustic telemetry study in the main stem Snake River, and we plan to Army Corps through Army Corps. This plan is to study juvenile lamprey with acoustic tag and learn about how they migrate through all these dams. So finally, we have a tag that's small enough that we can put into these juvenile lamprey. So it's pretty exciting. And then, for larvae, they can often be found in irrigation canals in the Yakama Basin. We have lots of these, and this is what it looks like when it's dewatered. Lamprey are pretty small, skinny, so they can go through some of the smallest, mesh size, and a lot of these canals are designed to prevent salmon from passing, but they're not small enough for lamprey. And then sometimes we see hundreds and thousands of lamprey that just desiccate in the sediment because they don't always come up right away. They can kind of stay in the wet, moist sediment for some time, and so it's really hard to get them out when the dewatering is too quick. These are some of the things that Yakama Nation does for lamprey restoration and research. We do what's called the adult translocation, where we pick up adult from lower Columbia River dams, and we basically give them a ride to the Yakama Basin and allow them to spawn We also do artificial propagation, where we actually take the eggs and melt and produce some hatchery fish. We just started releasing some of those last year experimentally, and we also do a lot of electrofishing surveys and research in the canals and tagging and such. When just a quick takeaway that I want to show from the restoration work that we've done. Initially, Pacific Lamprey really found in a limited place within the Yakama Basin, just in the middle reach near Yakama and some of the lower tributaries. But after translocation, they're pretty much found kind of throughout the Yakama Basin, all the way to the headwaters, the uppermost dam, and all the way downstream. It gets pretty warm in the lower reach, so they're kind of here and there, but they're pretty much occupying all the habitat in the Yakama Basin. So distribution has really increased from less than 100 river kilometers to over 450 kilometers. And let's see, I think I'm close to the end here. I wanted to just close with a few thoughts. I think Lamprey gives us a chance to look at our roots. We typically think about monkeys or ape like being our ancestor, but I think if we look further back, Lamprey, we probably look something like a lamprey out in the ocean, and this is kind of where we're heading, and it kind of makes me wonder if we're heading in the right direction. And I think sometimes we need to look back and maybe talk with the lamprey to see if we're on the right track. I think there's many definitions for wisdom, but I really think wisdom is ability to sustain life from generation to generation, and in that sense, lamprey has a lot of wisdom. So a lot of things we can learn from them. So sort of like a Jedi master, how I look at them. We're often we often have these blinders, and a lot of times in this line of work we kind of focus on salmon and kind of forget that there's all these other species that are out there, and I did well, so yeah, to keep every cog in wheel is the first precaution of intelligent tinkering, as although Leopold said. I think lamprey is an important species that we need to preserve for salmon and the whole ecosystem that's out there. And maybe perhaps instead of a Endangered Species Act, we need something like an Endangered Habitat Community Act that really protects all the species that are out there, not just single species. And we need to add crayfish to that list. So I just added this today. And yeah, and we tend to, there is sea lamprey in the Great Lakes that are invasive. And if you're from the Midwest, you probably know this, but they are trying to actually get rid of lamprey in the Great Lakes. Not all lamprey. There's native lampreys, but sea lamprey that came in through the canal. So sometimes we get that bad rep, but and there's movies that are on Netflix you can rent too. But I think the only way we can overcome that is by just having using the social media to show the true nature of Pacific lamprey and what they do. And they've been here longer than even salmon, and share that habitat and space, and they really need each other. So there's some great films that are out there called The Last Fish. There's a few series, but really encourage you to check it out if you haven't seen it. And lastly, I think, we I think there's people that think that lamprey are ugly, but I think if we look at our mouth, it's pretty ugly as well. So I think it's just all perspective, and really need to look at the whole, big picture for understanding lamprey and in ourselves. So with that, there are many things that we could do to be creative and share the love of lamprey. You can hold the lamprey at for your dental operation as a safety cushion, or you can run a marathon with the lamprey. There's many different ways that are, um, and these are some of the teeth that lamprey shed. I don't know if you can see them okay, but sorry, one of our staff makes these artwork with the teeth that lamprey naturally shed over time, and yeah, just many ways to spread the love. And really, partnerships are important for this work. Tribes are taking leadership role in this, but really need all the other agencies to really make it successful. And I want to add the River Mile to this group as well. And there's also conservation agreement that was signed last year by many entities, and it's still not too late to sign them. So perhaps if you're part of our organization, you could consider signing on to this voluntary agreement to help lamprey. I think with that, that's my last slide. And Elmer Crow, with the Nez Perce tribe, he passed away a few years ago, but he really inspired us, and he always said spiritually, lamprey is one of us. Wanted to end with that.
Nice. Ralph, that was fantastic. So interesting. My wife and I were laughing hysterically. I muted myself so I wasn't too distracting. But I hope everyone else enjoyed it as much as we did out there. And who has questions? We had many of them answered that I had going into this about how many species there are, how many in the Northwest, so much great information. But what wasn't answered for folks, you can feel free to kind of turn on your camera is a nice way to just kind of ask out loud. I'm going to put on the gallery view here so we can all see each other. It's nice to see a lot of old friends. We got John Erickson from here in Portland, and many other friends here. Feel free to unmute yourself, turn on your camera, and just maybe tell us who you are quick, where you're from, and what your question is.
Yeah, this is Robert Harris from Toppenish, Washington, Toppenish Middle School, exactly. Good afternoon. Myself and Mr. Vargas, my colleague, we have an outdoor education recreation club along with our Washington State history class. We're raising salmon now in the classroom, and we were interested in raising some lamprey in the classroom as well, maybe in the tank. And we was wondering if you could assist us with that.
Definitely. Yeah, we are starting that with school in Plain, Washington, Beaver Valley School. They've been really interested in getting some lamprey in their classroom. So we are starting that transfer, I think, next week with the adults and some of our larvae from the hatchery. And yeah, I think we can use the same tank that you have for lamprey, and adults don't feed at all, so you don't have to feed anything. And it's pretty easy to hold them. You just got to make sure they can't jump out of the tank. They're escape artists. But larvae do need feed, but there's ways to like you can use natural feed that are that won't, stir up the tank. So that's what we're experimenting with the school up in Wenatchee area, and yeah, happy to
So we
bring
could,
some more.
so we could put them in with the leave-in and with the fry. And they wouldn't.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, they're, salmon can eat the little lamprey, but if they're both small, they're probably not gonna do
Okay.
anything to each other. And yeah, adults are not feeding at all, so yeah,
If we,
pretty safe.
so they would have to have the cold water, same type of environment as a salmon, correct?
Yeah, lamprey are a little more hardier than salmon, so they can tolerate warmer temperature, and they can freeze and still survive too, so they're pretty hard.
We'll try to contact you later. And we can talk more about it.
Yeah,
Maybe we
yeah,
get you to come in and be a speaker for us in our club.
yeah, great.
Kids would really enjoy that.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's exciting. And I'll mention that I was working with a school here in Portland called the Cottonwood School, and they actually got lamprey at the school. I'm not sure who the partner was. I think it might have been U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but anyone in Oregon that would like to get lamprey in the classroom, let me know. I'll be sending an email to everyone, so you have my contact info, and I'll try to figure out who those partners are that can bring them in the classroom.
Yeah, Oregon has a great program, and we're trying to see if we can bring that program they invented to Washington schools.
Sweet. Who else has a question?
I have a quick question, I guess. I saw that video, I was able to watch your video of the lamprey trying to get around that sharp bend in the dam. And I like to introduce my students, give them a bunch of information, but also find problems that we can maybe engineer solutions around. And I don't know, has anyone been working towards, other than removing dams, amending them so that somehow they're more lamprey friendly? And if there's articles I could refer my students to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one simple thing that works is kind of rounding those corners. So just, low budget, work to get round it, or even reduce the angle just a little bit can help. But yeah, things like the wetted wall. There's also, we're trying to use audio senses, the water splashing sound to kind of help attract them. Thought about putting an underwater speaker or something to, help get them there. There's lots of different ways I think that we can be creative and help improve the situation. So yeah, I think it would be great to have kids um, creative thoughts and ideas to contribute to.
So yeah, so they can be kind of stimulated towards those pipes you showed
Yeah,
with
right,
that's cool. Okay.
right. Because it's just the flow is not, it's a small amount of flow that's coming in. So really, they have to find that entrance. That's kind of so we try to put them in a place where they're naturally inclined to kind of congregate, and that's the best thing. But still, if there's ways to really attract them more, um, yeah, it's great to come up with more creative ideas.
Yeah, I love that, John, doing the engineering project to help solve this problem. Maybe the kids will save the day here. Marnie has a question, arrived a little bit late, asking about the landlocked lamprey compared to the ocean-going ones. Can you just sum up real quick, Ralph, the different species
Yeah.
and how they work?
Mhm. Yeah, there's the Western brook lamprey, that's stays in the freshwater their whole year, and there is a Western river lamprey that goes out to the ocean, spends maybe a few months, and then comes back. So, and even though they have a separate name, they do interbreed, and they're related to each other. So yeah, they're sort of like the steelhead and a rainbow trout. They do completely different things, but are related.
That's great. I noticed Lee's had his hand up a while. Lee, you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Hi, this is Lee Kane from Astoria High School. We've got an aquatic biology program down here, and we do a lot of stream surveys, and we've encountered both the brook lamprey and the Pacific on those surveys. We've seen them spawning. It's really cool to get video underwater, but most of the time, of course, they're pretty invisible. And I was curious about what work you may have done with eDNA, and if the other question is there any way that schools can get involved in the eDNA studies of lamprey?
Yeah, yeah, we started using eDNA in 2018, and they work great. It's able to detect them even at a really low abundance. Like we electrofish, and we find we get positive detections, and even in places where we can only find like one lamprey, larval lamprey, and so yeah, it's a great tool that we use, and I think there has been some examples where some of the local volunteers have collected samples for like in the Puget Sound. There's a lot of unknowns about where lamprey are. So there was I'm forgetting her name, but she received an award for really pushing the envelope, and taking samples and trying to help discover where lamprey are distributed. So yeah, I think it's a great tool to use.
Excellent. A couple other questions. One was asked about the lifespan. I think you answered that one. 10 to 20 years, maybe an average of 14 years. Ralph, would you say that's true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we used to think they only spend 1 to 3 years in the ocean, but through genetics, we're finding out that they spend more like 5 to 7 years in the ocean. And, yeah, so it really expanded the longevity estimation.
That's cool. All right, I think we should take two more questions. One is, or maybe three more questions, and then we're going to give you a chance to close with your little longer poem, if you still have energy, Ralph. First, has the Hanford site impacted the populations of lamprey?
Yeah, yeah, certainly, radioactive waste has had an impact in the reach, and we don't know specifically how it impacted them. Lamprey do like to spawn in large rivers, so Hanford Reach is a really prime habitat for them. Um, yeah, we contaminants is another issue that we're working with, and we know that they contain a lot of contaminants, like with the example of mercury and others, but we just don't know how it's hurting them. They seem to survive pretty high dosage of various contaminants, but we just don't know how the impact of that and how that's hurting them.
All right, thanks. Opportunities for future research. Brandon, your question, please.
Did you say Brandon?
Yes.
I just want to say, Ralph is Brandon Hay from Reynolds. I had Ralph come in last year to my class, trying to, like a lot of you guys were saying, get them to experience new species. And Ralph was very warm and open, and the kids loved his presentation and the fact that he had the live species in. But he's also very warm and opening up his work site for me, where I was able to bring my family up to see his site and see where he worked. And my 9-year-old daughter loved being able to have some just personal time, kind of being his little helper one day, just kind of seeing what he does and work with the stuff. So just kind of an awesome program Ralph has here for you guys to get engaged with.
Thanks for that.
Thanks a lot. It's awesome. All right. And then we'll take one more question, and then that's going to be Jim Grano. And then Ralph's going to share his poem. And then maybe if there are a couple last questions you think of, maybe Ralph can stick around for those. So Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. First, I should add that Ralph has always been warm and friendly and totally great with kids from his days back in the Siuslaw watershed down in the Mapleton, Florence area. So glad you're still that way, Ralph, which I suspected you would be. My quick question, hopefully, is are we in the Northwest dependent on hatchery lamprey? And if so, do they survive better than the salmon species from hatcheries?
Yeah, there's only a handful of facilities that are raising them, mainly just Yakama Nation in the Umatilla tribe. There's other entities that are, I guess raising the larvae, but we propagate them. And we just started releasing them, last year. So we're still monitoring them, what have survived and where they're moving to. And, it's more of a, we want to do it for conservation reasons, to make sure in a dire situation, if fish numbers really decline, we can still propagate them through hatchery. And but hopefully we don't have to depend on hatchery. But there's also a lot of studies that are coming up, and that need lots of fish to tag and release. And so we're planning to use them for that purpose as well, and other like survival studies for like contaminants and other things, rather than mining the wild population. We're hoping to use these to to do those kind of needed studies that are out there. But so we don't know, but we are trying to compare the adult translocation impacts and the artificial hatchery release impact, and see how they compare over the long run.
Do you have a way of marking them so someone would know?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, mostly through genetics. So we collect the genetic sample from all the adults that we translocate or propagate. So when we find the offspring, we'll know that it came from this source or that source, and so we'll be able to see which ones are surviving better and those kind of things. And we use eDNA as well to help measure the relative abundance in stream by looking at that as well.
yeah, thank you.
Great. So yeah, thanks for sharing all this exciting science. And it sounds like there's a lot more we need to learn, but so much is happening now too. It's an exciting time for lamprey research. It's also an exciting time for integrating the arts, right? Because we know that if we bring in the arts, the kids are so much more engaged. All of us are more engaged. And I know, Ralph, you have a little art. I'd like to let you close with that. And before he does, I just want to do a quick shout out to a crayfish and freshwater ecosystem workshop we're doing on March 11th. It'll be hybrid. You can join from anywhere in the world via Zoom, or if you're lucky enough to be within driving distance of Bend, Oregon, you can join us over there. We still have just a couple spots left for in-person attendees. We're almost at the max, but please sign up with the link at therivermile.org. And we might even be able to put you up for a night. We're getting close on the budget, but if you sign up right now, there's a chance we can put you up, and we'll feed you there too if you can make it in person. All right, Ralph, are you ready?
All right. Let's see, here we go. I'm a vampire bloodsucker parasite, and many people want us simply out of sight, but we have the right to fight the plight and hope down the road you'll see the light. We've been around for 450 million years, so stop the smear. And don't you miss here, we were up here long before the dinosaurs appeared. Can't say this without a tear. You know I'm a sucker naturally, but don't you dare judge me. I have a function on this planet. And can't you try to understand it? We bring back the ocean's rich nutrients to serve our fellow constituents. We need clean water, just like a son and daughter. And who said who gets slaughter? All my sons and daughters, live on, live on. It's the rival of the Lamprey revival. Live on, live on. Forget about all this neglect and deprival. Live on, live on. We deserve our own survival. Live on, live on. Forget about putting us in historical archival. As a juvenile, aka I'm a seat, I don't feed on any meat except for a special treat. I filter feed on algae and detritus. Now come over to my pad and maybe you can try this. I help digest the stream debris so you can enjoy the clean water carefree. Fish, birds, and mammals devour meat, but I'm still alive in their poo and pee. You see, it's this. Sorry.
It's so awesome.
Sorry. I messed it up. I messed it up, but maybe I'll stop right there. It's probably a sign of something.
How about a round of applause for Ralph? That was really awesome. Wonderful song and just everything, Ralph. Thank you so much for sharing. And maybe if folks have a few last questions, maybe we'll stick around just a couple more minutes if we're not cutting into dinner time too much. If people need to leave, thanks everybody who could join us. We will put the recording out so you'll be able to review all these great facts you learned today. All right, any last questions before we sign off? All right, it sounds like maybe people just want to leave it on that really inspiring, fun note. Again, we're the River Mile Network. We're here to support you. Let us know what you need. My email address is rick@engagingeverystudent. Just email me if you need anything at all, and I can try to connect you with folks that can maybe get lamprey in your classroom or whatever. So thanks, everybody.
Hey, Rick, just a quick note. I put my current email address in the chat because some people were talking about getting some stuff to me. Because I'm retired, my email is through the River Mile. And so it's the rivermilemgt@gmail.com. If anybody, and that'll reach me, Rick, Pauline, any of us managing the River Mile. Thank you so much.
Excellent, thanks. And maybe I'll do a shout out just to two more dates. We are going to have a crayfish conference on June 1st in Tri-Cities, and it'll be free, open to all. It's going to be, it's going to start out at the Reach Museum on May 31st. We'll have a reception there we're excited about. And then on June 1st, we'll be at the Holiday Inn there in Richland. And we'll share about crayfish. We'll have experts like Ralph who will share about crayfish research and the cool things happening with schools around the Northwest and beyond. We also have a few workshops coming up at the Reach Museum. Pauline, what dates are those again? April? I'm trying to remember our dates.
I believe April 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th. So
Right.
4 days in a row.
Yes, so on April 15th, we're going to do crayfish and freshwater ecosystems. It'll also be hybrid, but if you want to join in person, that's at the Reach Museum on April 15th. And then we've got Ice Age floods on the 13th. I think it's fur trade, Northwest fur trade on the 12th, and sagebrush ecosystems on the 14th. So I'm looking forward to all those, and we hope we'll see you maybe at one of our upcoming events. Thanks, everybody.
Our next community gathering will be the last Thursday in February, and join us for that one. It's Jamie Osby Marsh talking about their work with the West Valley Outdoor Learning Center in Spokane, Washington.
Very cool. And I think there are birds involved, right? Because we also have Bird Fest coming up in February. So if you signed up for this event, you should get a notice if you ask to be included in our newsletters. And that's a free event. It's going to be online, all about cool bird things happening from around the Northwest and beyond.
And if you don't get an email from us, there should be one coming out maybe tomorrow now. Then the website, the rivermile.org, It will be on that soon. The website itself it's there somewhere. I know it. You can find it, but we will have it on the main page very soon.
Great. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks for joining us today, and let's keep in touch.
And Rick, all the other ones you're talking about should be on the main page of the website.
Yeah, they'll be on soon. The only one that's on there right now is the March 1st, but the other stuff will be posted soon.
All right,
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm working on it now. So if you've opted in for the newsletter, hopefully it worked right. If you don't have something, I'll probably get some of it out maybe tomorrow morning or late tonight and early part of next week. If you do not see something and you wanted to,
Let us know.
email us, go to the website, and we have Facebook groups, so you can get hold of us in many different ways. Let us know and we'll make sure that that's taken care of.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All
You all have a
right.
wonderful night.
Yeah, thanks you too, Robert. Great to connect. And Ralph, thank you again. That was one of the best, most inspiring presentations I've seen. We are fired up to get our students fired up about lamprey.
I can't wait to get in the classroom.
Oh my gosh, yes. So great. All right, everybody. Well, on that note, I think we'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening and we'll see you again soon.
Take care.
Okay, bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Good night. Bye-bye.